Alligator who?
Alligator who?
Boys tomate y gallina batasang dahua. And then cuando the cow vaina tina follow ketchup.
Why is the koala a bear? Because it doesn't have the right qualifications.
Dad, does your face hurt? 'Cause it's killing me!
Hey everybody, good morning. My name is Chris. I'm one of the leaders here at Center Church. I want to first pause and say thank you for joining us from wherever you are at, and happy Father's Day to those of you who are fathers. I've got the honor today of speaking to the fathers, and if you are a mother or not yet a parent or haven't been a parent or don't ever want to be a parent, there's some stuff here that's going to apply to you as well that I hope you can learn from as we're talking through all of these, because what we kind of realize, I think, as a society, especially today, is that it really takes a village to raise a kid. It's not just one or two people required to do that. So there's a handful of things that I'm going to be kind of going over today that I hope you can glean something from as we jump in. But before we do that, would you pray with me? God, thank you for bringing us here this morning from wherever everyone is watching and tuning in. Would you open up people's hearts? Would you soften people's hearts? Would you teach them the things that you want them to learn? God, would you speak through me to the people who need to hear your message most today? Amen. So a little bit about me and my family. I figured I would start there probably more than anywhere else. I have been married to my beautiful wife, Laura, for 12 years, actually this last month in May. And it's been a good 12 years. You can probably see I've got a decent amount of gray hair in that beard. That's not her fault. But it is the 5 kids that we have that have led and contributed to most of that. My kids are amazing. If you've seen them around, you know that they all kind of come as a herd, as a whole pack. So first off, I've got Jaden, who just turned 11 last week. Firstborn, and then Riley, who's my daughter, who is 9. I have Liam, who's 6. He's my little surfer boy. Micah, who is 5, and he is just like Dad and rocks glasses just like him too. And then I've got Tyler, who is a whole different ballgame. And I love my kids deeply. And I know that if you are a parent, you love your kids deeply too. And one of the things that I've just reflected on this last week is the things that are necessary to raise what I would consider to be well-functioning adults, right? When you look at what it means to be a parent, I think that all of our collective goal is to raise well-rounded, functioning adults, right? And one thing that I kind of want to just address real quick as we jump into this is I know that lots of different relational dynamics can happen. If you're a single mom, a lot of what I'm talking about today is also going to be helpful for you. If you are married and you've been married for a short period of time, I remember exactly what that was like. If you've been married for a long period of time, I kind of know what that's like too. 12 years isn't a ton of time, but it is enough to be through a ton of different experiences. And I want you to know too that even kind of where I sit in all of this, I'm young and I have a lot to learn. And so I hope that I can encourage you with a handful of different things that I've picked up on and that you can apply to your daily life. Before we go any further though, one thing that I just want to kind of address with the wives and the moms out there. I'm speaking directly towards dads today. And I'm going to kind of call out some things that might make you a little uncomfortable, but that was kind of on purpose. That's just kind of how I roll sometimes. But moms in particular and wives, one thing I want to just make sure that you recognize in all of this is you can't fix him. And so my hope today is that you take this as an encouragement. And my encouragement to you more than anything is encourage your husband and surround him with other men who honor God and who are going to help push him in the right direction. Because I've recognized, and I've gotten into it with my wife over the years about her trying to fix me or repair me. I am broken, and so is your husband. But he also knows that, and he doesn't necessarily need to hear it from you. So before we go any further, I wanted to just kind of put that little caveat out there that I know the tendency is going to be to go send him this talk and be like, listen to this. But that's really in his timing and in God's timing. And so I just encourage you to surround him with people who are going to love on him the right way and continue to do that. So let's kind of jump right into what I had in store today. I kind of really just have 3 ideal points that I wanted to hammer home on what it means to be a God-honoring father. And one of the things that I've learned so far in being married and having 5 kids is that really this is it's a two-person sport. And what I mean by that, at least in my marriage and so far in my life, is one of the things we've been intentionally creating is a complete value set for our kids. And this happened a couple years ago that my wife gets full credit for creating this and putting it together, but it's going to pop up on the screen here. But this is our family mantra, and we call this the Sheridan family mantra. All 5 of my kids have committed this to memory, and we say it often because I believe that when you instill a core set of beliefs in your kids, that they have something to build off of foundationally. So I'm just going to read it to you real quick, but it's going to pop up in here. The Sheridan family mantra says, "I stand on the rock everlasting. He makes me brave. I can do hard things and I won't give up. I'm generous and kind. I do what is right, not what is easy. I'm always learning and always growing. I'm never alone. I'm a part of the Sheridan pride. I'm worthy of love. I'm God's masterpiece. I will be all he made me to be, and I am a child of the one true King." That family mantra for us has been something that we've used as a tool to be kind of the North Star, if you will, in our family. And what I'm going to do the rest of my talk here today is walk you through some of those points and some of those things and what they relate to. But the Sheridan pride is really all about a group of people, right? A pride is a group of lions. And we were kind of intentional about picking that as kind of our family animal, if you will. One, Sheridan is Irish, and that is actually on our family crest, something that I have a lot of background in and I love about my family. But the thing that I've gleaned most from this entire family mantra, if you will, is allowing and helping your kids identify the priorities that they should have in their life. And so kind of with that, the first thing that I really want you to, and if you haven't already, go ahead and pull out that app, the You Belong app, because we've got some verses in there and an outline in there that I want you to follow along with. The first one that's in there is love God. As a father, as a parent, as a person, we believe at Center Church that our saying is Christ at the center of me and me at the center of his city. And it starts first with Christ at the center of me. And so that first thing that as a follower of Christ and as a father, my number one priority is to love God. And I'll tell you just from my own experience that the biggest reason that's an emphasis for me and an emphasis for my family is because I'm accountable to a lot of people. I'm accountable to my kids, I'm accountable to my wife, but above all else, I'm accountable to God. And you can't lead your family effectively without following. And there's no one better to follow than Christ in leading your family. Because there isn't a magic playbook. There isn't just one thing you can use in guiding your family. And so the biggest part of that is following God. And you can look to his word to glean the resources necessary to do that. I want to read you something real quick. Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 through 9. This is from the Good News Translation. It says, "Israel, remember this, the Lord and the Lord alone is our God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. Never forget these commands that I am giving you today. Teach them to your children. Repeat them when you're at home and when you're away, when you're resting and when you're working. Tie them to your arms and wear them on your foreheads as a reminder. Write them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates." If you ever walk into our family, into our home, you will see verses all over the place. And my wife has done an amazing job with our home. We also homeschool our kids, so it's half school and half Bible verses just plastered all over our walls. But this is something to me that, even looking back in the Old Testament, it was made really clear right away. Follow God and teach that to your kids. Jesus picks us up in Matthew as well. In Matthew 6:33, it says, "Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need." You see, one of the things that I've experienced in raising my kids, and I've got just a quick story to kind of share along with that connects both to my family mantra and to these kind of verses. My oldest son, Jaden, it just turned 11, but last year he went through kind of a really, really rough patch. And that was based on a decision that my wife and I actually made. You see, Jaden is an amazing baseball player. He loves playing Little League. He does travel ball. That is his sport. If that kid wants anything in life, it's to go play for the San Diego Padres. But he shouldn't, because they never win. Sorry, Padres fans. I'm also a Padres fan, and I want better for my kid. Anyways, he loves baseball. And so he made the All-Star team last year as a 10-year-old, and he was kicking butt. He was doing an amazing job. And my son works really, really hard. He practices more than any other kid I know. And on that team, there were a handful of things that as a parent, I observed and I just became uncomfortable with. The way that the coaches would interact with the kids, the way that they would coach or yell at the kids, the way that they would berate them, caused me to feel more and more uncomfortable. And so the night before his first game of his very first All-Star team, I called the coach and I pulled my son from that baseball team. And my wife and I went back and forth on what does this look like? How do we walk this out as parents? Because that kid loves baseball. And this is no fault of his own. He wasn't the one who was making poor choices. He wasn't the one who was berating people. But one of the things that I have struggled with more in my life is teaching my kids how to identify righteousness and how to do the right thing. One of the things that's in our family mantra is, I will do what's right, not what is easy. And it was a really hard decision as parents to pull him from that team. And I'm sure some of you would have your own opinions on what that looked like. But here's what my job was. Here's what my goal is for my son. Not to make sure that he has every expectation or gets to play in every All-Star game. My job as a parent is to teach my son integrity. And it spoke more to the Little League community, and it spoke more to my son that we stand by integrity more than we do this desire to perform or to play. And for the next 6 months, my son, he was heartbroken. Telling him that the next day was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. And it hurt. It hurt him, it hurt me, it hurt my wife. But doing the right thing is not easy. It's hard. And now Jaden understands that. He understands that there's an expectation in our family that you do the right thing, that we are people of integrity who walk that out. And he's fully behind that. And now he's back in baseball, doing travel ball, playing the sport that he loves. But he knows now more than anything that his parents, that his father, stands by having integrity and doing the right thing and standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. And that's a lesson that I always want to teach my kids. To seek God and to seek righteousness. We have countless stories like that. We, as a family, stand by integrity, and we will always stand by integrity. And I have other stories that I'll share with you along those lines. But the second thing is this. Fathers, love your wife. It speaks volumes about the integrity of a man based on the way that he treats his wife. Ephesians 5:25-28 says, "Husbands, go all out in your love of your wives, exactly as Christ did for the church. A love marked by giving, not by getting. Christ's love makes the church whole." Check this part out here. "His words invoke her beauty." I've been married for 12 years, and we've had some knockout, drag-out arguments, right? We've all been there. But do your words invoke beauty, or do they incite anger? I told you I was going to get in your business a little bit, so let me keep going. Everything he does and says is designed to bring the best out of her, dressing her in dazzling white silk, radiant with holiness. And that's how husbands ought to love their wives. This part's amazing. They're really doing themselves a favor since they are already one in marriage. That's the quintessential, like, I believe that's where happy wife, happy life came from, right? That premise, that idea that you're really doing it for yourself. But sometimes it's really, really, really hard, right, to lay yourself down in the middle of an argument and when you know that you're right, right? I can tell you from experience and many, many times, many arguments, it's foolishness. Be at peace with everyone as much as you possibly can, especially your wife. And here's the biggest core for this. It's not because you aren't entitled to have your opinion. It's not because you aren't capable of disagreeing and having an argument or disagreeing with somebody. At its core, it's because your children watch you more than you recognize. And having healthy conversations and dialogue is absolutely amazing. My wife and I do it all the time. But your kids watch. And how you treat your wife, fathers, is how your daughters will see how their future husbands should treat them. Let that sink in for a second. Let that send a chill down your spine. How you treat your wife, how you treat their mother, is how your daughter will find her future husband. How you treat your wife is how your sons will know how to treat their wives. So what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? I'm not saying that that's an easy thing to walk out. Sometimes it's really, really, really difficult. I'll share with you another kind of personal story. Many years ago, back in 2011, actually, we had 2 kids, Jaden and Riley. And I was a pastor. I was working at a church at the time. My wife was as well. And things were not good in our marriage. We were on totally different pages. And as kind of a result of a difficulty in marriage, I'll be just throwing it out there, I developed a pornography addiction. And I told you I was going to get in your business. That addiction caused all kinds of issues in my life. Not just in my marriage, but I believe that because God doesn't honor that I was experiencing difficulty in work, that the leaders and the pastors and the people that I trusted in my life, they saw something different in me than they used to, and that they were used to. I started misperforming at work. And so as a result of that, my wife, being the amazing, loving person she was, encouraged me to go away for a couple nights and to seek God and just to see what he was saying to me. And so I went to a hotel and I hung out there, and I was seeking what the Lord was asking. And he made it really clear. He said, Chris, this is an area of sin in your life that you need to correct. And I knew what the consequence was going to be. And if there's one thing I can say in my life that I want my kids to know more than anything else, is that I am a person of integrity. And when there's a difficult decision to be made, it's oftentimes the right one. And so I went home. I drove home that same night. My wife was very shocked when I did. And I told her, I confessed. I said, I have developed a pornography addiction, and I know what has to happen. And she knew, and she encouraged me, and she pushed me. Because what that meant is, I believe that as a pastor, that a sin like that in my life, a sexual sin like that, is irreconcilable. That I couldn't at one point be a pastor and lead other people and encourage them in what they needed to do, and continue to be a hypocrite. And so the very next morning, I went and I drove to the church, and I resigned. I had 2 kids, and I didn't know what was next. I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't have anything in mind. All I knew was that I was supposed to take the step of obedience, and that I was supposed to put my marriage first. And I'll tell you what, that was the best decision I've ever made in my life. I've learned the consequences of sexual sin like that in your life can be devastating. Your sons and your daughters are watching. They know. And the current cultural climate throws that aside and says it's not a big deal, but it is. So fathers, husbands, get it in check. I'm calling you out because I know that over 90% of men have that as an addiction, that they have a sexual addiction to pornography. Fix it. Because you can't love your wife and at the same time have that sin in your life. Put your marriage first. Put your wife at the forefront of what you're doing. And I'll tell you what, that road was not easy to walk out. It was not easy. It was very difficult. But I had people in my life, pastors and other people who loved me and loved my wife, who wanted to see us succeed. And so the next thing that I kind of want to encourage you to do, and this is whether you have that as an area of sin in your life or not, but get help. Because what I said at the very beginning of wives, you can't fix your husbands, you're right. But you are broken, men. We're broken. It's called sin. We all have it. And at our core, we don't like to seek help. We don't like to ask for help. But the only way that I was able to move forward in my marriage and to circle back to being able to be a good father was to get counseling. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you inferior. It shows and demonstrates a faithfulness and a strength that most people cannot comprehend. So get help. We have amazing resources available to you to do that. Get help, because I'll tell you, I spent more time in counseling, more time in therapy than most people you know. And it's the best thing I've ever done. The thing that I can tell you in all of that is I know that in some of your marriages that you've broken your spouse's trust. And one thing that I learned pretty early on in that counseling is that trust is faithfulness demonstrated over time. And so first, you can ask for forgiveness. And second, you continue to walk out and be faithful in whatever area of your life the trust was broken. I encourage you to do that. And 3, love your children. That's probably assumed, right? That as a father, you want to love your children. But what does that look like? What does that mean? Here's the thing. I believe that it means that first you need to understand your role and the timing of that role. I learned and listened to a book a long time ago that really talked about the different phases of life in parenting. And so I want you to just take some notes in the app or wherever you're at. Phase 1 is the commander, right? And here's what that means. That means as the commander, you're the one making all the calls, right? This is typically when your kids are really young, right? From the time they're born, probably up to the time that they're 6 or 7 years old, right? You're the boss. You're the one they follow. You've got to get their shoes on. You got to get them dressed. You got to do everything, right? You're the commander. You're the one in charge. And in this phase of life, your job is to instill in them the discipline necessary to move to the next phase. And I know that some of you have kids who are older than this, and that wasn't done with, and that makes things more difficult and complicated. Don't try and go back into a previous phase, because it doesn't work that way. But being a commander in your house, fathers, being a commander, mother, being a commander means that you teach your children discipline. There's a great verse in the Bible in Proverbs 13:24. It says, "A refusal to correct is a refusal to love. Love your children by disciplining them." Now let me just pause right there for a second, because here's what I want to acknowledge. Some of you grew up in a way that discipline equaled abuse. And that's not at all what this verse is talking about. And if that's happened to you, I'm so terribly sorry. Because that's not what godly discipline is about. And I encourage you to explore, what does godly discipline look like? Let me continue with this one. The entire chapter of Proverbs 13 is a foundational core, I believe, in understanding how to parent your children during this phase of their life, which can be oh so difficult. When I say that I've got 5 kids, everyone's natural reaction is, whoa! And that's appropriate. I believe that that's absolutely true. But I'll tell you, at one point we had, I think, 4 kids under 10. Maybe 5 kids under 10. I don't even know how that math works, whatever. But that's a challenging thing, to have 2 or 3 kids in diapers, toddlers running around. It's chaos, right? All the time. And discipline looks like instilling in your kids the ability to understand consequences to their actions. And sometimes that can be very difficult. But here's what the rest of the chapter says. And I love this chapter and how it all phrases out, right? This one is Proverbs 13:1. It says, "Intelligent children listen to their parents. Foolish children do their own thing." Can I get an amen? Right? Everyone here is like, yes, 100%. Except most of them aren't old enough to be able to read that. So that's okay. But here's what's cool about Proverbs 13. You look at the very beginning of it, and you look at the very end. And in the book of Proverbs, right, it's often a lot of different snippets, a lot of different components that are all kind of collected in one. The cool thing about the way that Proverbs 13 specifically is written is that there is a correlation between them all. Proverbs 1, intelligent children listen to their parents, foolish children do their own thing. 3, it says, careful words make for careful life. Careless talking may ruin everything. 13 says, ignore the word and suffer. Honor God's commands and grow rich. 18, refuse discipline and end up homeless. Embrace correction and live an honored life. You see, discipline, that one just for a second. One, discipline your kids or they're going to end up homeless. I'm kidding. That's not actually how it works. But you're teaching your kids to embrace correction so that they can live an honored life. What that means is when there is an accident or something that happens or something that needs to be corrected, a behavior, you're teaching your child not to just not do that thing, but at the same time to embrace the ability of being corrected. Because too many people today don't want to hear it. They're not wrong. They're never wrong, right? You can't be right. Right is relative in today's standards, right? That belief is at the core of wickedness, I believe. So you're teaching your child to embrace correction. 24 says, a refusal to correct is a refusal to love. Love your children by disciplining them. And 25 finishes with, an appetite for good brings much satisfaction, but the belly of the wicked always wants more. If you don't teach your child to embrace correction, they're going to have an appetite for more because they're not going to understand the consequences to the decisions that they make. And in that phase of being the commander is where it's most necessary to do that, to set up healthy boundaries. There's so many resources available for parents, for young parents, for older parents, all different kind of ages that your kids are in. One of the things that I encourage you to read is a book called Boundaries. Boundaries for kids specifically, on how do you help them establish healthy boundaries and understanding consequences. Phase 2 is the coach. And this really is all about teaching them to think for themselves, right? Sometimes there's a little bit of discipline in here, but you're coming alongside your child to teach them to think for themselves, not to just rely on you for direction anymore. Phase 3 is the counselor. This is oftentimes late teen years or into early adulthood. But you're letting them make their own mistakes and you're helping them learn from those things. You're the counselor, the person that they go to. And the best way to do that is to build trust as they're young, to build trust as a coach, to make yourself available to them through your time, through intentional conversations, so that you can be in a position to be the counselor. And then the last one is the consultant. This is the age of your kids being adults and your adult children coming back to you as a consultant on a decision that they are going to make. There's a mutual respect in that. And that is the goal. And it sounds really nice and clear-cut and cute. It's all 4 C's, right? It's a lot more difficult than that. And you know that. But at its core, there is a path forward. And if you understand what role you're supposed to be filling, you can be intentional about trying to parent your child in that way. Here's the last thing that I want to challenge you in, is leave an intentional legacy. What do you stand for? Be intentional about instilling the values in your children that you have at your core, that are derived from what God has spoken to you about, and that you can instill in your kids. In 1 Kings, it says this in chapter 2. It says, when the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon his son. I'm about to go the way of the earth, he said. So be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in obedience to him, keep his decrees and commands, his laws and regulations, as written in the law of Moses. Do this so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their hearts and their soul, you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel. There's so much packed in that I absolutely love about what David was doing, right? If you've heard me talk in the past, I shared probably a few months ago, on Solomon becoming the king, right? Solomon goes on to ask the Lord for wisdom, right? And sometimes we look at that and we go, man, Solomon was so smart. He was so wise. He asked the Lord for wisdom and God gave it to him and he became the wealthiest king to ever live. He became the man that everyone went to for advice. But I'll challenge you with this. David's dying words were, act like a man, observe what God requires of you. And from then, Solomon took the step to go ask the Lord for wisdom. So what kind of intentional legacy are you leaving for your children? You see, I am the man I am today because of my dad and my mom. I owe them both so much. My dad is a pretty incredible person, and he had a very tough upbringing. He grew up in the South Bronx in New York City, and at age 18, joined the military and came out to San Diego. And I've learned a lot from my dad. He didn't grow up in the church. He grew up Catholic. And when he came out here to San Diego, he met my mom, and they went to church. And my dad turned his life over to the Lord. And for 35 years now, my dad has been reading his Bible every single morning, as faithful as they come. And my dad's got all kinds of flaws. He knows that. And if he's watching this, he knows that too. We all do. But one thing I've learned from my dad is that he is faithful in going before the Lord every single morning. And one of the things I love about my dad is that he was intentional about surrounding me and my sisters with other people in our lives to help us and teach us different things that he didn't know how to do. And so a couple of weeks ago, it was actually my dad's birthday, just this last week. And I'm a big reader. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. I read and listen to all kinds of books. And I got this book called The $1 Trillion Coach. And my dad loves to read. So every morning he'll bring out his Bible, he'll have his newspaper, and he will read a book. And every morning my dad sends me a picture of a book that he reads every single day. And it's just an encouragement to me. And I gave my dad this book as a gift for his 58th birthday last week. And in it, I wrote a note. And I want you to just see the legacy that you can leave as a father. And here's what I wrote. I said, Pops, you opened the door for our family legacy. From the Bronx to the boardroom. I've learned a lot from you and the people you surrounded me with. Your encouragement of reading and learning has put me in the position I am in, and my kids and grandkids will have opportunities we can't even imagine. You are my original coach, and we owe everything to your stubbornness and your belief in yourself and in us. Thank you, Dad. When my dad goes, when he kicks the bucket, there will be more people who attend that man's funeral than anybody I've ever met. The impact that he has had, not just on me and my family, but on many countless others, is amazing. And my goal as a dad is to do the exact same thing for my kids. And what you'll see in that letter that I wrote to my dad is that reading and learning has put me in the position that I am in today. And that is core to my family mantra. I'm always learning and I'm always growing. And my kids will repeat that every single day for the rest of their lives. And so I challenge you with this. What kind of legacy are you leaving for your kids? What are you instilling in them? What are you teaching them? And I hope and I pray that this is an encouragement to you, not something to discourage you, something to encourage you, to step up your game, to be intentional in spending time with your kids, to put God first in your life, to love your wife the way that she deserves and the way that your kids need to learn, and to love your kids by being intentional with them, to teach them, to encourage them, and to discipline them. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for being the ultimate coach, the ultimate mentor, the ultimate teacher. I pray that you would encourage everyone today to seek you first and to put you first in their life and to learn from your word, God. Thank you for the fathers who are there, God, who are working and are trying. Thank you for the mothers, God, who are filling those shoes as well. Thank you for the grandparents who are stepping into that role, God. Would you encourage them all and enable them all to teach the youth of today the right path forward? We pray these things in your son's name. Amen.